All right. Good evening, everybody. If you are joining us live, then it is April the 8th of 2025, and you're here for a College Make It Happen webinar for middle school students and parents. I'm Carla Whitaker. I'm here from Cal Soap. And I just want to mention a couple things. One is that we are recording this webinar. And so I'm going to actually put a link to it, like I'm going to upload it to YouTube and make it a link so that you can view it after the fact, or if you know someone who wasn't able to be here, they can view it. And I'm also going to have the slide deck that I'm sharing tonight with clickable links and everything that will also be available on our website. So in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and drop that link to the CalSoap website, our webinars and blog section. That's where people can find, that's where people will be able to find the presentation and the slide deck. And let's say, yeah, so tonight we're going to be just going over three kind of basic things about college. We'll talk about choosing a career and major interests. We'll talk about the college admissions process, and then we'll talk a little bit about paying for college as well. Although you won't be able to type into the chat, you should probably see a Q&A tab down at the bottom, or for some of you, the top of your screen on Zoom. It depends if you're on a Mac or a PC or a phone or whatever. But if you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A. Although I'm not able to view the Q&A while I'm sharing screen, I have a few middle school counselors who have graciously offered to be here, and they're going to see if there's any questions that they can answer or if they want me to address them out loud. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started and share my screen, and we will get down to it. All right. All right, so this is my information. I'm Carla Whitaker. My email address is kkwhitaker@ucsd.edu. Zoom might have sent you some reminders from me for the webinar, and our website is calsoapsandiego.org. CalSoap San Diego, that stands for the California Student Opportunity and Access Program. We're part of the California Student Aid Commission, and we have a presence on social media. We're on X, Facebook, and Twitter. We're also on YouTube, and we have a website as well. When I'm working with students, a lot of times I start out by just asking them, okay, well, what is your definition of college? What do you think of when you hear the word college? And I get a mix of all kinds of different answers. And they're all pretty much correct. There's a lot of different associations. I would say a basic definition is school to prepare a student to prepare for a future job and career. But one of the differences between high school and college is that in college, you're choosing your classes and you're choosing your major. And so for any students who might not know, the major is the specific subject in which you take the most classes while you're working on an undergraduate degree. These are some examples of some popular majors. This is a very limited list. There are dozens and dozens of majors available. But it could be something like engineering, it could be something like business or biology or performing arts or computer science or education. But these are things that when you're working on an undergraduate degree, you have something called a major. And a lot of students want to know, well, what major do I need for a certain job? Or how do I find out what college I can look for my major, like to find out if a college I want to go to offers my major. And a website that I do recommend for that is mymajors.com. That's kind of the whole purpose of that website, is just to show you what majors are available and which colleges offer them. And you can start with a very general search, like you can just search for something like engineering. But then you can also specify your search and say, well, I'm actually just looking for civil engineering or computer engineering or electrical engineering or whatever it might be. So I do recommend mymajors.com as a resource. There's a few other resources, and this presentation again will be made available to you so you can click on the links, but CA, California Career Zone, is a great website for finding out about how to adult, how to create a budget, how to find the career you're interested in or the major you're interested in, what might be a good job or career for you. ONET Online is another one that one has a lot of statistics. It's a good one for adults, actually. San Diego Workforce Partnership, if you're looking for a career in San Diego. Also, Big Future Careers is a great website. And if the student wants to explore specifically careers in healthcare, there's a website called Explore Health Careers that I think is really good because it doesn't focus only on what people often think of just as like nurse and doctor, but there's so many more careers in the medical field and so many more programs available even in local San Diego colleges and universities that give some of the opportunity for a career in healthcare. And these are some topics that I encourage students and parents to talk about together. You can ask students, if you're a parent, you can ask, hey, what's your favorite subject in school? What problem in the world do you want to solve? Do you have a dream job? Have you thought about what college you want to attend? And if you know what career you want to do you know what degree or degrees or training you need for that type of career? I also point out to students, usually parents are already aware of this, but I point out to students that college also gives you the potential to earn more money. So even though college does cost money, the reason a lot of people find it a worthy investment is also because if they're searching for a certain type of career opportunity, a lot of times the more education and training they have, the more options they have, the more opportunities they have, and sometimes the more opportunity they have to make a bigger salary. So I show them, for example, the median weekly earnings in America of someone with these various education levels. And you could also translate that right into median annual salary. And if you want to see mean instead of median, if you'd like to see averages, I have this slide that shows average earnings over the course of a lifetime versus if you do or don't have a high school diploma, there's a jump there. If you have some college, if you have a bachelor's degree, a master's, a doctorate, et cetera. So of course, the education alone isn't what gets you the money, right? It's actually working. It's having, a good work ethic and training and background and determination and all of those things. But also for some jobs, you need a certain amount of training and education that's just required for them. All right, and I do tell students also, sometimes they think of college as more school, and that to them, that means more work. But I also want to point out to them that college can be a fun place where they can play sports, where they can attend sporting events or play, even if it's not for the team or for the college, they could play recreationally. A lot of colleges have opportunities to study abroad, even if it's just a brief, like a spring break abroad or a quarter or a semester abroad. There's connections that they'll make in college and friends that they'll surely make in college. Colleges have clubs, leadership, community service, jobs and internships. It's a great place to find mentors. And they also have a lot of services for students that maybe aren't available in non-college environments. Like there's going to be a student health center where the student can always go if they're feeling sick or they need medical care. There's a career services center they can go where if they need help with a resume, finding a job, learning about job skills and interview skills. There's also discounts. I tell them, like you can get a discount to Disney Hulu Plus, you can get a discount on Apple and your Amazon Prime student membership and things like that. So there's some little perks and benefits as well. I also tell them to think about what would you like to be your purpose in life? I'm hoping that they are going to choose a vocation that is going to enable them to live the kind of lifestyle that they want, and that they get a job that allows them to pay the bills and have a home and have food and have healthcare and have those wonderful things. But I'm also hoping that it's something that they don't dread, something that they enjoy doing. So I tell them to kind of think of it like all of these four things. Yes, I want it to be what you love. It's also nice if it's something that you're good at. In terms of feeling like a mission or vocation or a calling, maybe what does the world need or what problem did you want to solve in the world? And also, this is an important one, what can you actually be paid for, right? So though all of those things together is how students can start thinking about a career. All right. If you are researching careers yourself or on behalf of your student, or if you're asking the students to do the research, at the middle school level, there's really two basic things that I encourage them to focus on. And one is, what is the starting and average salary that they can make in a certain job? And also, how much education or training do they need? For example, for a lot of engineering jobs, the minimum they need is a bachelor's degree. There's even some certain engineering jobs where they might need beyond a bachelor's, like they might need a master's in a certain kind of engineering. If you want to be a university professor, a community college professor, a high school or elementary or middle school teacher, there's different types of, salaries available and training that's needed. every career is going to have this information readily available. What is the, what is the amount of work that what the amount of education you need, and how much is the average that you can make? All right. Okay, so these are some of the big acronyms that we talk about, that I want to make sure to break them down and make sure that you're familiar with these and you know what these college-going acronyms mean. GPA is grade point average. AP is for advanced placement. A through G is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's a list of classes they need to have finished by the end of high school in order to qualify for most universities. And then SAT, ACT, that's the Scholastic Aptitude or American College Test. And let me break it down and give you a few more details about updates on this terminology. So most students already have a grade point average, so they know what a GPA is. It's usually on a 0 to 4 scale. Now, when you hear about students getting something like a 4.2 or a 4.4 GPA, that is because they're talking about a weighted GPA. And what weighted means is if the student is taking an approved honors or AP course, they get an extra point in their GPA for that course. In other words, an A, which is normally worth 4 points on a 4-point scale, an A in a college class or an AP class would be worth 5 instead of just 4. And the B, instead of being worth 3, the B is worth 4. And the C is worth 3, etc. A D or an F doesn't count, actually. But that's the GPA that colleges are looking at usually, often, is the weighted GPA, if that's something that they're taking into consideration. Advanced placement, these are optional, if you want to call them kind of college level classes that are offered in high school, that indicate students can handle college level rigor. It's something that for some universities, when they're doing their admissions process, if they're a competitive university, they're maybe looking for, are students taking these classes that are showing that they can handle advanced rigor, the type of rigor that a college is going to be asking of them. There's kind of two parts to AP. There's the class, and then there's the AP exam. And I'll break it down and kind of explain the difference. So if students pass an AP examination, they're given once a year in May. If they get a score of a 3, 4, or 5, it's on a 1 to 5 scale. Most colleges will eventually award them college credits or units if they pass that exam. Now, they can take the class and not take the exam. They can take the exam without taking the class. But very, very often the two go hand in hand because the class is preparing you for the test. Now, let's say you took the AP course, regardless of whether or not you decided to take the AP test. That grade of an A, B, or C in an AP course gives that student that extra 1 point in their grade point average in their weighted GPA. And so that's the advantage of taking the class, regardless of whether or not you take the test at the end of it. So there's the AP test, and there's the AP class. And although they're related, you can technically do one without the other if you'd like. I'll show you on another slide what are the A through G classes that are needed to graduate high school in San Diego Unified, and also to be considered eligible for most, like UC, CSUs, and a lot of universities. I will say this about the SAT. It used to be required by nearly all universities for freshman admissions, but because of the pandemic, most universities had to, for a limited time, do without test scores at all. And many of them chose to go back to requiring a test score. Some of them changed their policy to just considering it, but not requiring it. And in California, they really kind of took a different route, and they no longer look at the SAT at all for college admissions for the public universities. So that's the UCs like UCSD, UCLA, UC Berkeley. They're not going to use an SAT score for college admissions any longer. They don't do that anymore. And also for all the CSUs like San Diego State, Cal State San Marcos, Cal Poly SLO. Currently, they are not using an SAT for an admissions decision. Now, if the student decides to take the SAT, and let's say they get into that university on whatever other merit, their GPA, their classes, etc., if they then have taken the SAT, they could submit that score because it could be used for something like course placement purposes. But in terms of an admissions requirement. It's not going to be required at the UCs or the CSUs, and it's never been required at the California community colleges. There are some private and out-of-state universities that still either will consider an SAT score or will even a few of them even require it. So if you're looking at a lot of Ivy Leagues, for example, have gone back to requiring an SAT score. And there are many, many more that will consider it if submitted. All right. So when I say GPA, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Are we looking at every grade since 7th grade or 6th grade? Are we looking at just high school? Are we looking at weighted, unweighted? What are we looking at? Now, this does vary from college to college. Some colleges might use a weighted or an unweighted or a combination. I can tell you what's for sure with the UC and the CSU system is that when they're calculating a GPA, it's only based on classes the student has taken in grades 10 and 11. Okay, it's the courses they take as a freshman, yes, they count, but as far as the GPA they're looking at, they're only looking at grade 10 and grade 11 courses for a GPA consideration. They can't look at grade 12 yet. They will eventually look at their final transcript and make sure their grades didn't drop, but they are only looking at grade 10 and 11 in November, December, January when they're actually looking at the applications. For the UCs and CSUs, it is weighted, so they do get those extra points for approved honors and AP classes up to a certain maximum. It does not include PE, so PE does not count in your GPA for a college. It's only based on A through G courses, and a D or an F in any year or any class can disqualify you from university admissions. It is possible that they don't want any Ds or Fs on your transcript. There are ways to retake the class and make that grade up, but just letting you know that. Okay, so what are these A through G classes? What are we talking about? A means you need to take 2 years of history in high school. B is you need to take 4 years of English. C is you need to take 3 to 4 years of math. Now I'm saying 3 to 4 years, the minimum of 3 is required, but 4 is recommended. And this is one subject where they will actually look back as far as middle school. So if you're taking IM1 or Algebra 1 in middle school, it will count as a year. The other ones you have to pretty much do only in high school, but 3 to 4 years of math. So why would someone take 4 if they didn't have to? It's because the admissions at a lot of universities have gotten very competitive. And so one way to kind of separate students out is to see, well, who went above and beyond? Who did more than just the minimum? So if that's you and you're trying to get into a very competitive selective university, then I would be that person who, especially if you're doing some kind of STEM major, who went ahead and took that 4th year of math instead of just the minimum of 3. They also want 2 to 3 years of science. Again, 2 is required, 3 is recommended. They would like 2 to 3 years of a language other than English, and both years have to be in the same language, and ASL does count. This is another one that math and language other than English are the 2 where they will look back as far as middle school to give students credit for language other than English. You need 1 year of visual and performing arts in high school and 1 year of an elective that's anything from elsewhere on the list. All right, any questions right now that need to be answered? Okay. All right. I know it gets a little bit confusing because when we're talking about GPA and A through G, a college admissions office looks at those as 2 different things. GPA is just the grade point average, just based on grades earned in 10th and 11th grade, and they might cap the number of honors or AP points considered. It's the same cap for everybody to make it fair. A through G, that's based on all the approved classes they have taken or are taking or plan to take in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. They do even look at middle school for math and language other than English. It can show a student takes advantage of rigor and challenge, and it's balanced by how many courses your high school offers. So they don't want to penalize a student that attends a high school. Let's say there's a rural high school far, far away, and they only offer 2 AP classes. That's all the student can take. So they could be in just 2 AP classes and they're already taking 100% of the AP classes offered at their school. That's going to be looked at differently than a student who maybe goes to a high school that offers 10 AP or 20 AP classes. So they do try to look at the student in the context of the high school they're coming from. All right, so this is kind of handy for students to let them know that college doesn't look the same for everybody. First of all, college doesn't have like an age maximum. You can go to college as soon as you graduate high school. You can start college while you're still in high school. You can go part-time, you can go full-time, and you can always take a break and come back to college. Sometimes you have to do it in a different way than you planned, but college isn't always where you go away, and it doesn't mean it always takes exactly 4 years. It's going to depend on a lot of factors. Some people live at home, some people live on campus, some people live off campus by themselves or with friends. Also, some people are going for the type of career where you need to go for a bachelor's degree and also a type of graduate school, and sometimes even beyond that, like fellowships and internships and things like that. So this is to kind of help people understand how long it would take if you were going full time, how long it might take to get into one of these careers. If you wanted to get into something like automotive repair, or maybe be an administrative assistant in an office, you could probably do that at a career vocational technical school or maybe a community college, and probably, yes, less than 1 to 2 years, depending on the exact trade you want to get into. You can probably get some good training to get right into a career in that in a pretty short time. An associate's degree is usually offered at a community college. Just for example, if you didn't want to go through all the schooling to become a dentist, but you wanted to be a dental hygienist, or you didn't want to go through all the school to become an attorney, but you want to be a paralegal, there are programs that offer associate's degrees. These usually take about, like I said, about 2 years if you're going full time to a community college. Then there are a lot of times when people say I have a college degree, what they mean is they have a bachelor's degree. That's what they commonly mean. If you are going full time, a common amount of time it would take to finish is about 4 years. However, at some colleges it takes longer. For some majors it takes longer. For some students who do full-time classes every quarter and semester and do summer school, it might even be shorter. They might even be graduating earlier. But 4 years is about the average. So say you wanted to be something like a marketing manager for an internet company, or some type of engineer, bachelor's usually is the minimum. Now, for some careers, yes, you still have to get that bachelor's degree, but then you have to also go above and beyond it. I do often get students asking me, well, can I just skip the bachelor's and go right to the teaching credential when I'm 18? No, usually you do have to get a bachelor's in most cases before you can do a graduate program. Of course, it depends on the student. If you wanted to be something like a school counselor, if you wanted to teach at the K-12 level, if you wanted to be a physical or occupational therapist, you'd probably need some type of certification program or graduate program after getting your bachelor's degree. If you wanted to be a lawyer, an attorney, you would apply to law school after you get your bachelor's. What would you get your bachelor's in? It could be anything. It could be pre-law, it could be political science, it could be communications, criminal justice, it could be many things, but you would apply to law school. Probably take the LSAT to see if your scores are good enough to get in. Law school full-time, it might take about 3+ years. And then you also have to take the bar exam at the end to not only have the degree, but then to practice law in a certain state. And then if you wanted to kind of pursue the career that takes the most education, that's probably going to be some type of doctor, whether it's a PhD, doctor of the philosophy of, who is somebody who might be a college professor in that subject, or like an EDD, which a high school principal might be an EDD, have an educational doctorate, a medical doctor, an MD, and that would cover many things. MDs can specialize and be pediatricians, they can be psychiatrists, they can be surgeons, anesthesiologists. There's many different ways, oncologists. They can specialize an MD. The same if you wanted to be a veterinarian, if you wanted to be a dentist, a pharmacist. Then after your undergraduate, you would apply to medical school, which usually takes about 4+ years. And then you have additional years of internship, residency, and sometimes fellowship. So again, college looks different for everybody. It depends if you go full-time or part-time. It depends if you take breaks. It depends if you change your mind about your major. And it depends how much total schooling that you need to get where you need to go. I do like to make sure that people know that there's 2 different ways to get the same bachelor's degree, and there's not a right or a wrong way, but there's benefits and limitations to each. So one way to get a bachelor's degree is to start as a freshman at a university. I'm going to use UC San Diego as an example. Okay. So let's say I start as a freshman at UCSD and I go there for my freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, and I earn enough credits and I graduate with a bachelor's degree from UCSD. Wonderful. I can also start at a community college. Like I could start, for example, at Miramar College. I could start working on my freshman and sophomore year there, but then I could apply to transfer, let's say also to UCSD, finish my junior and senior upper division level courses there at UCSD. And at the end of that same 4 years, I get that same bachelor's degree from UCSD. So what would be like a benefit or a limitation of these different paths? One benefit of maybe a 4 years at a university is a lot of students tell me, I want that on-campus experience. I want to be able to really be part of the campus from day one. I want to be there for 4 years, and I want to live on the dorms. I want to live on campus. A lot of community colleges do not have dorms or on-campus housing. So for a student who wants that dorm experience and wants to spend all 4 years in the same university getting their bachelor's, then that might be the best route for them to go. A benefit, of course, of starting at the community college and then transferring, there's a couple benefits. One is that your chance of getting in is actually significantly higher. Say if I were applying to UCSD as a freshman and my chance of getting in is maybe about 23% chance of getting in, but my chance of getting in as a transfer is usually over 50%. So that might be a benefit. Another benefit is for those first 2 years, you're paying community college tuition, which is much, much, much less than a university tuition would be. And also technically, if you're a California resident, you should be getting your first 2 years of community college actually tuition free. So even though it's a low cost, if you were paying, the tuition should be covered if you're a California resident for 2 years, your first 2 years full time. But then again, there's that drawback that usually at a community college, the highest degree you can get is an associate's degree, right? They offer very few bachelor's programs. And so after that 2 years, unless you change your course of study, there might not be a bachelor's available. Associates might be the highest. And then there's also, again, some limitations such as there's not the same on-campus life because they don't have on-campus housing, things like that. Okay, so these are some of the systems of higher education we have here in California, and I'll go over like what each of them kind of what they're like and how much they cost and the admissions process for how to get in. So we have 3 public systems in California. We have the community colleges, we have the California state universities, and then we have the UCs. All 3 of these are public. They're kind of going in order of tuition cost, right? So the least expensive would be the community college, then the CSU is the next most expensive, then the UC. Then we have our private colleges like Point Loma Nazarene or University of San Diego or USC, the University of Southern California. These are going to be the highest tuition. Keep in mind, they might also have the largest financial aid packages, but these ones don't take the same degree of government funding as the state schools do. So they are, that's why they have to charge more for tuition. All right. So what factors are they considering when they're saying, should we admit the student to college? For a community college, all the student has to do is either be 18 or have a high school diploma or equivalency. And at that point, they can apply to a community college. The community college is not going to select them out or try to be competitive based on like their grades or their test scores in high school. That community college is there for the community, and it is not meant to be, there's not meant to be barriers there, right? It's meant to educate and include as many people in the community as possible. So they're not looking for a certain GPA. They're not looking for a certain test score. They're trying to make the admissions process smooth and easy. They even have a free application, all right? Now for a 4-year university, the more selected they are, the more things they're going to look at. So one thing that's probably the most important is your GPA and your grades. Also extremely important is your coursework, what you're taking, your A through G classes, and if you're taking any rigorous classes like honors or AP or IB classes. And then some universities also factor in additional considerations, like some of them do look at an SAT score. Some of them do ask you to list your extracurricular activities or community service or athletics so they can see, or leadership to see what you're involved in. Some of them will ask you to write an essay In the case of the UCs, they ask you to write PIQs or personal insight questions. It's kind of like 4 very short, I almost don't want to call them essays, but let's say 4 short written assignments, whereas something like the Common App will just have 1 essay or personal statement, and then you might have additional supplementals for individual universities. All right, so I want to start with the community college system. We have more than 110 of them. They offer, degrees so that you can start and transfer like associate degrees, but they also offer a lot of vocational and certificate programs. It's going to be a free application. The admissions process is not competitive. The big thing is apply as early as possible and apply on time. If you're a California resident, you should get 2 years of free tuition. And even after that 2 years is up, you're still going to get a very reasonable tuition at a community college. You'll have similar general education courses as you would in a university your first 2 years. They have a lot of flexibility, offering things like evening classes. And again, you can start at any California community college, do your freshman, sophomore year there, and then apply to transfer to a university to finish your junior, senior year. Limitation of community colleges, no dorms, and for many of them, the highest degree is an associate's. Mesa City and Miramar do each offer a bachelor's degree in just one individual subject. So that is possible, but there's only one major that will allow you to go all the way to a bachelor's degree. These are some of the different careers that you can get ready for at a community college that you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree to do. And I like to point out to students that we have a fantastic system here in San Diego. We have 3 different community colleges with fire academies. So if you want to be a firefighter, that's where you go. There's different degrees of nursing. Say you weren't trying to go for a bachelor's in nursing, but you wanted like a CNA or to be a nurse's assistant. They have programs in that at City College and the College of Continuing Ed. They have personal training and fitness specialist certificates. They have phlebotomy certificates at Mesa. They have cosmetology, which is like hair, makeup, beauty at San Diego City College. They have culinary arts at Mesa and at the College of Continuing Ed. They have a vet tech program at Mesa College, a respiratory therapy program at Grossmont, a music, audio production, digital music technology program at City College. So there's a lot of really good opportunities locally with our community colleges where students can get really high quality hands-on education, especially if they want to get right into a career and they're not looking for as much of a classical take subjects in every single subject type of background. Okay, the Cal State system is next. There's 23 of these, although it's going to reduce to 22 because Maritime is joining another campus. That's another story. There is an application fee just to apply to the CSUs, although there are fee waivers available for low-income families. They are looking at your A through G coursework. You need a 2.5 minimum GPA to be considered by a CSU. Now, that's the minimum. If you're looking at a very competitive CSU that's hard to get into, that minimum is not going to be enough to make you competitive, but that is the minimum. They no longer look at an SAT or ACT score. Many of them admit by major, some of them don't. They each are allowed to have their own policy about whether they admit in general or by major. They all have the opportunity where if you want to start at a community college, you can transfer to any of these as an upper division. These are public. They're comparatively affordable. California residents do get in-state tuition. They all offer bachelor's degrees and higher. They all have on-campus living. And that is one, the CSUs and the UCs is the only place that you might get what's called a middle-class scholarship, which is if you are not making the family income level isn't quite low enough to qualify for like low income financial aid, but they might qualify for a middle class scholarship, which is money that can go toward the tuition at a CSU or a UC. Okay. What would be a limitation of a CSU? It is more expensive than a community college. And sometimes there are some very impacted majors. If you haven't heard, the most impacted major almost everywhere that offers it is nursing. That's a very hard one to get into for a bachelor's degree. We have the UC system next. There's not quite as many of these, only 10 and only 9 that are open to undergrads because UC San Francisco is just a graduate medical school campus. The one down here we have, of course, is UC San Diego. Again, there's an application fee per campus. They also are looking at A through G coursework. They have a 3.0 minimum. And again, that's just the minimum. That doesn't mean it makes you competitive. They are not considering the SAT for admissions decision. And the UCs are also looking at other factors. They do ask for extracurricular activities, community service, leadership roles, and they do ask you to write those personal insight questions. And they review all of that when they're looking at your application. So they're taking what's called a holistic or comprehensive review. It is still public, and you do still get in-state tuition, and it is a good value compared to maybe a private or out-of-state university, but it is going to be the most expensive of the 3 California public college systems. They offer bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees at all the UCs. They all have on-campus options for housing. And again, you might qualify for a middle-class scholarship toward tuition at a UC or a CSU. Limitations, it is more expensive than a CSU. It is more expensive than a community college. And again, there might be some competitive or capped majors that are hard to get into. Private colleges, there's many of these, and they vary widely. Some are big, some are small, some are selective, some are not as selective. Some examples locally would be University of San Diego, Point Loma Nazarene, National University, Alliant International. Elsewhere in California, you might see something like Stanford or USC. So these just really value everything from their application fees to their emphasis to their requirements really varies from campus to campus. I will say a lot of them use an application called the Common App. If you go to commonapp.org, it's basically one application you can fill out and then send to whichever private or out-of-state campuses you want to, and that makes it easier. So instead of filling out umpteen applications, you just fill out one and send it to the private universities that you're interested in. Now, a private university usually doesn't charge in-state or out-of-state tuition or international tuition even. The tuition's usually the same for everybody because it's privately funded. They offer bachelor's, master's, and higher. They have options to live on campus. They do tend to be smaller, have smaller class sizes. Some tend to be very specialized or have a particular emphasis. And they tend to have the largest financial aid packages. On the limitation side, admission to some of these can be extremely competitive, and it is usually more expensive than any of the other public college systems. There's also the possibility of going to like a vocational or technical institute, say, for example, the Paul Mitchell School or the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising or Pima Medical Institute. These are private. Some of them are nonprofit, some of them are for-profit. Just be aware that although it's not highly selective to get in, and you can often start, they do rolling admissions, so you can usually start anytime throughout the year. Sometimes they can be expensive. Sometimes they do or don't take public financial aid from the FAFSA, so you have to check with them on that. A lot of them are tailored to be flexible around students' schedule. Some of them have really good job placement and internship opportunities. A lot of times students can earn a certificate or some type of degree in a really short amount of time, so that's a benefit. On the limitation side, it can be pricey. A lot of times if they offer something that's called an associate degree, you have to make sure if you're trying to use it to transfer to a university, it has to not just be an associate, but an associate degree for transfer. And a lot of the vocational schools don't offer that. You also might be able to find the same program offered at a community college for a lot less money, but then there's going to be different things like, well, maybe you only are able to enter in the fall or in the spring, like twice a year. So but do just kind of shop around. And I tell people to be wary if it's a for-profit college. Examples of for-profit colleges in San Diego that have just closed their doors, like it's like a business, it's like a restaurant that goes out of business. And one day you're trying to get your degree there, and then one day you are not a student there anymore because it doesn't exist. And that did happen to the Art Institute, to Brightwood College, to Coleman University, and to ITT Tech. So just saying, be cautious before considering a for-profit college. Then you can also check, there's also out-of-state colleges. Some are public, some are private. Again, hundreds of different types of campuses with different policies. If you are an out-of-state student, unfortunately, and it's public, you might have to pay out-of-state tuition, which is usually, unfortunately, more than in-state tuition. There might be some universities that use WUI, the Western Undergraduate Exchange, where if there are universities in the West or in the Southwest, they might give California students like a break, not maybe in-state tuition or something close to that, at least for certain campuses or certain majors that they're trying to attract students to. So check with WUI, like for example, I'll use Arizona State University as an example. They do take WUI to give a discount for out-of-state students so that they're not paying out-of-state tuition, but only at certain campuses. Like Tempe is the big campus, but it might be at a different campus or only for certain majors. So you have to check it out. All right. Oh, and then there's an additional financial aid form that some private colleges ask for called the CSS profile. Examples of colleges that require it would be like MIT, NYU, Harvard, Stanford, Caltech, USC. They want the FAFSA, but then in addition, they also want the profile where they're asking even more personal family financial information. Okay, I also want to point out some military related options. Parents, if you are or were in the military, I would love for you to go to the CalVet, that's California Veterans website, it's calvet.org, and find out your benefits. Your students might be able to get partial or full tuition coverage at many California colleges and universities. Parents, you will know the terminology of if you were disabled and what percent you are disabled, and based on some of that information, it might allow the students to have sometimes a completely free tuition at a California public college, or sometimes a reduced tuition. Also, members of the military, you get GI benefits yourself. That's money to go to college. If parents, you didn't already spend that all on your own education, you can actually transfer it to someone like a dependent. So again, look at CalVet and see if you have any money left in your GI benefit that you would like to transfer to someone else like a student. Although California public colleges all work with students who are military and military dependents, some private universities also have a designation. They'll say they're a yellow ribbon school, and a yellow ribbon school usually means that there's a Veterans Affairs office there that will help families that are military associated. If you yourself want to join the military, I would highly recommend looking for a college that has an ROTC program. Like if you want to go in the Army, look for an Army ROTC. Or if you want to go in the Air Force, look for an Air Force ROTC program, because there's big scholarships associated with being an ROTC student in college. And you're not technically enlisted at that time, but as you go through college, you're getting a little bit of like military training on the side, but you're taking all the classes you would to get whatever degree you want. And then if you enlist or join a branch of the military at 18, again, they will often pay for your college expenses. But if you're joining the service full-time at age 18, you're not, your full-time job is the military, so you might not have time for full-time school simultaneously. That might have to come after your service. Okay, so let's talk about money. This is a subject that creates a lot of anxiety. And I know that this slide is kind of shocking because this is showing our sticker price. So I also want to talk about financial aid to help pay for college costs. But this is comparing the cost of tuition. So this is not counting food, dorms, books, anything else. But this is estimated tuition cost for 1 year full-time at these various college systems. So at a community college, now remember, because of what's called the promise, a California resident should get their first 2 years of free tuition at a community college. But let's say you had to pay out of pocket. The cost for a full-time student, depending how many units you take right now, is would only be about $1,200 to $1,400 a year at a community college. So it's an incredibly financially good deal. The CSUs are now up to about $8,000 a year. And because students are in middle school, I'm pretty sure it's going to go up more by the time they get there. So CSUs are about $8,000 a year. UCs are about twice that, with the tuition being about $15,000. And then when you say tuition and fees together, it's up between like usually about $15,000 and $19,000 a year. And then for private universities, let's say like Yale, Harvard, MIT, it's going to be somewhere upwards of $40,000 a year, usually for a private institution. So that right there, a lot of stress in this slide. So let's talk about financial aid and scholarships and ways to pay for college. As I mentioned, I'm just talking about tuition. There's, of course, going to be other costs like books and supplies, room and board, transportation, health insurance. Um, One thing that is nice is that when a college is giving their cost of attendance, they're not just giving the tuition. They're saying, here's the total cost we estimate it's going to take to attend here, both direct costs like tuition, but also indirect costs, things like food, where sometimes you are able to, instead of buying their meal plan, you can do meals on your own and maybe find a more economical way to feed yourself. Or sometimes there are a lot of college students who get SNAP benefits. There's food pantries in college and things like that. There's lots of ways for college students to get creative when it comes to paying for food. Anyway, okay, so the thing is, this total cost of attendance, sometimes financial aid packages are not covering just the tuition part. Financial aid packages can also cover rent and food and books and transportation and other things, all the way up to the estimated cost of attendance every year. So that's nice to know. All right. So the real question is, yes, how much does college cost? And we kind of know that now in terms of for an undergraduate degree. But also the real question is, how much financial aid can my family expect to receive versus how much would we have to pay out of pocket, use savings, borrow, and use loans and things like that. And that's what I'm hoping to kind of educate you about. First, these are the different ways to pay for college. Number one is savings, whether you're doing that in a savings account, whether you use a 529 savings plan so that that money is tax exempt and it's specifically set up for a college fund, or whether you are investing or whatever you're doing. Maybe the student is working, maybe you're working, maybe you have college savings. That's awesome. A lot of us are not able to save enough to pay for the colleges that we want to go to for the amount of time that we want to be there. I also tell people, make sure that to be ready when you're in 12th grade, when the student's in 12th grade, that's when you can fill out either a FAFSA or a DREAM Act. The FAFSA is federal. The DREAM Act is only for California students who are maybe undocumented, so they won't get federal money. They would only qualify for state of California money. So they're going to fill out either this FAFSA or this DREAM Act in 12th grade, and once a year, every year they're in college. From this form, that's when you're going to find out any grants you might qualify for, any work study you might qualify for, and any loans the family might qualify for. Okay, so keep in mind that grants are free, they're gift aid, they don't need to be repaid. So if you're offered a grant, always accept it. Work study is earned money, so the student gets a part-time job in college, but they get to keep their salary, so to speak, but it's being paid for out of FAFSA or government funds. Now, the last kind, loans, they do have to be repaid with interest. So that's the kind that you want to avoid that and try to pursue all other options first before taking on a loan. Scholarships. Now, the FAFSA is great in terms of it's just one form and you turn it in once a year and it's the same and it has the same deadline. All right, scholarships. They can be for different things. They can have different requirements, different grade levels. Like, could be for different amounts. It could be like a little $100 scholarship. It could be a $2,000 scholarship. It could be a $40,000 scholarship, right? So they all have like different deadlines, different requirements, all kinds of different things. However, I know that that is not convenient. But if it's like, I take an hour of my time to fill out this application and maybe I write an essay that goes with it, and if I can earn $2,000 for that, I'm taking it. That's a good deal for me as a student, right? And then the last way is that you can borrow money. You can take out a loan for college, and you want to decide as a family, are we going to take loans for college, yes or no? And if the answer is yes, you want to ask yourself, what's my return on investment here? In other words, is it worth it to pay for a certain college amount? If that student, for example, is going in undecided, okay, maybe if they're going in undecided, maybe they start at a community college until they make a decision or something like that. So a loan is kind of like, it's a family discussion, and you have to decide, like, is it worth it? And if we do want to take them, what are the different kinds of loans? So I'll get a little bit into that too. Okay, there's something that used to be called the EFC, the expected family contribution. They've changed the terminology. It's now called the SAI, or the Student Aid Index. It's a number. It could be a negative number, like it could be as low as negative 1,500. It could be 0. It could be 5,000. It could be 50,000. It's just a number that That's what college financial aid offices are using to be able to kind of classify students in terms of how much aid they're able to offer them. So the lower the SAI, the more need-based aid the student could qualify for. And SAI does not vary. It's the same no matter what college you're looking at. What changes from college to college is the cost of attendance because of their changes in like the cost of living in that city or their cost of their tuition. So the cost of attendance might change, but your SAI does not. Once you have that SAI, it's good for a whole year, and it's based on your family size and income. Okay. So if the student is a US citizen or a permanent resident, then they're going to fill out the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. If the student does not have a social security number, like maybe, for example, they are a California resident, but they are not a US citizen, they have the option if they'd like to instead fill out the DREAM application. So they cannot fill out the FAFSA unless they have a social security number. But everyone as a 12th grader should fill out one of these two forms, right? And then you get back kind of an aid report that tells you any federal or state money you might qualify for based on that. What info are they going to ask you for? You got to be prepared because they're going to ask you for your family size, student and parent income, if any. And if someone doesn't have a job or doesn't file taxes, that's okay. They'll just say, what is your income, if any? Student and parent assets, if any, such as savings, 529 plans, investments, rental properties, the value of any business or farm that you own. It will not require the value of the home you live in. It will not require the value of your retirement accounts. Those are not considered assets. That's your home and your retirement. And then the parent income will continue to be considered until the student is age 24. Parents, even if you say, I'm cutting you off, the government doesn't look at it that way. The only way the government looks at the student as independent is in a couple situations. For example, if the student is a foster student, if they're legally emancipated, if they join the military, if they get married, if they have if they have a child of their own, or if they're homeless and unaccompanied. Those are the only situations in which the student can be considered independent. Other than that, until age 24, they're going to ask for parent income. So even though you might be getting a statement back from the FAFSA saying, here's your kind of aid report and here's what federal and state money we could offer you, what you really get the money from is when you decide what college you're going to go to, where you're accepted and where you're going to go, the financial aid office will give each student a financial aid package, and they'll package together everything. I've never seen ever on a financial aid letter anything that says full ride. It just isn't, it doesn't exist. It's not packaged like that. Now you might have something that adds up to cover the entire cost of attendance, but they're not going to call it a full ride. They might say, look, you qualify for this Pell Grant and that's $7,000 a year. You also qualify for work study. And so you could make $2,000 or $3,000 a year if you get a job. We're also offering you these loans and you can decide how much you want to take. If it's a school in California, they might offer you a Cal Grant A, B, or C. They might offer you DREAM Act money. If it's a UC or CSU, they might offer you the middle class scholarship. If you've been a current or former foster youth, they might offer you the Chafee Youth Grant. Then there might be other institutional aid and scholarships, like the community college might offer you the Promise Grant or scholarship, or the UCs might offer you the Blue and Gold, or CSU might offer you the University Grant. State University Grant. So they will package all these things together, and they will also include any outside scholarships you're maybe bringing with you, and they'll let you use all these things simultaneously. So most families in the US, when it comes to paying for college, although it's nice to know that about a fourth of college expenses on average are paid by grants and scholarships, you can see from this pie that a significant chunk is going to be parent income and savings, student income and savings, and borrowing, either the student and or parent borrowing in the form of loans. We want to try to increase that grant and scholarship eligibility as much as possible, and reduce the amount of things like borrowing and savings. What can you do right now to plan for college expenses? One thing you can do is that you can save money however you like to do that. Again, we talk about the 529 savings plan because it is going to mean that it is tax exempt. That money is technically it's tax deferred because if you take it out early for another reason, then you'll be taxed on it. But if the student uses it for college expenses, eventually it's tax exempt. So that's one way to save, or in your savings account, or however you like. Also, I strongly recommend you go to the studentaid.gov website and type in aid estimator. This lets you estimate what your future aid package might look like. And it's not a real FAFSA. You don't, I mean, I know it'll ask for like your birthday. You can even enter a fake birthday. And it'll ask for your family income, and you can even enter a fake income. This is not a real form. It's just an estimator. So it gives you an idea of, okay, well, I see that based on our family size and our family income, this is the kind of, it says we only qualify for loans, or it says we would qualify for probably a Pell Grant or whatever. Also, become familiar with scholarships. Even though many of them, you do have to wait for 12th to be in 12th grade to fill out the scholarships, start finding out about them now, start learning about them, start getting lists together so that you're ready when that time comes. And of course, also get ready to fill out either the FAFSA or the DREAM Act once the student is a high school senior. I do want everybody to check the CalKids website. If you go to calkids.org, if you enter your family size and income, you might be surprised to know that you might already have a scholarship waiting for you. The student, if they're a public school student in California, they might have a scholarship waiting in a 529 plan already set up for them. So the only way to find out is to go to calkids.org and check that out. What else? And then there are some scholarships and contests for younger students. Again, most scholarships are for high school seniors, but I do want to, let people know that even when they're not a 12th grader, like for example, the Big Future scholarships are also open to 10th and 11th graders. So is the Paula B. and Oliver W. Jones Foundation Scholarship, 10th and 11th graders. There's something called the Breakthrough Junior Challenge, which are like, a video contest for ages 13 to 18 on a STEM concept, like a 2-minute video. FastWeb, if you look at the FastWeb website, it's a national database, and you can enter that the students only in grade 6, 7, or 8 right now, and like what scholarships might be available for a middle school student. There's also contests like the VFW has a Voice of Democracy scholarship contest, and they have 2 categories, and one of them is a middle school scholarship. So it's based on a essay that you write about democracy and patriotism. Gloria Barron also has the Gloria Barron Prize for Young Heroes, and that's from ages 8 to 13. Another one is there's a haiku competition, and that's open to students in grades 7 through 12. And that's just some of them. So a lot of them at the middle school level aren't technically a scholarship yet. They're more of like, sometimes they're more of a contest based, but it can't hurt to start now, right? So a couple final tips. Always have a reach, match, and a safety school. Like your reach is your dream school, your match is your good fit school, and then always have a backup or a safety school. If I don't get into any of my other first choices, what is my backup plan? And have a backup plan. Don't rule out the college only because of cost. Look up things like financial aid, find out about scholarships, use the studentaid.gov estimator, and talk with everybody, family, friends, counselors, teachers, talk about your choices. So these are some of the resources that I highlighted, and I'm going to have these available for you, but our website, calsoapsandiego.org, also CA Career Zone, californiacolleges.edu is excellent, workforce.org, Big Future, CalKids, mymajors.com, and onetonline.org. So these are good resources that I recommend to people. Again, we're on social media, so you can find us on X, Facebook, and Instagram, and we also have a YouTube. And my information, kkwhitaker@ucsd.edu. All right, let me go ahead and stop sharing. And I don't think that there's anything, I don't see anything left in the Q&A for now. But thank you very much to Stephanie and Heather for logging on. I will go ahead and end the webinar now, and I will make sure that they have I will make sure that they'll have a copy of this presentation that they can share with you. And it's also going to be available on our website tomorrow. Let me go ahead and put that in the chat one more time. So at calsoapsandiego.org, we have a blog section, and that's where it will be posted tomorrow along with the slide deck. All right.
Thank you, Carla. Appreciate you.
Okay,
Thank you so much, Carla.
Thank
Bye. Have a
you.
good night.
Good night, everybody.